Hey guys, it's the Gundam Boy, and today we're going to be taking a look at the B-01 Tactical from Helldivers. Specifically the McFarlane figure. Something that I think is interesting is that they put the Elite Edition on the side. I don't know what the white and gold's supposed to mean other than, you know, it's fucking white and gold. And the neat thing on the back of the box is that it has the official artwork. So why don't we get to reviewing this box specifically before we get into the figure. It's rectangular, it has a barcode. This is a joke, by the way. I saw a toy reviewer where he was genuinely critiquing the box. If you're curious about where I got this figure, well, I got mine from my local Walmart where nobody knows what the hell Helldivers is anyways. I got mine specifically for $57, but I've heard from other people say that it's really hard to find this figure. And oh boy, let me just say the scalpers ran out of Pokemon cards. Makes me want to reach for my Double Freedom and ask him a question. Taking a look at the actual figure itself, I gotta say it's pretty damn accurate to the B-01 Tactical Helldiver. As a Day 2 Helldiver, I gotta say it's pretty wild seeing it in this form. Because before I was rocking the Golden Eagle, this was my main armor set. There was a time when everybody was running around in this armor. It's pretty neat to see it like this. And if you ever wonder why I swapped over to wearing the Golden Eagle armor, no, it wasn't so that I would stand out amongst content creators. I just didn't want to get blown up by my blind girlfriend. Right off the rip, there's a few details that I've noticed about this figure that isn't consistent with the actual armor in Helldivers. This waist armor is very cloth-like in-game, or at least it's not leather, or at least the in-game model makes it look more like it's a Kevlar material, but they do add this leathery texture across a few parts of the figure, like underneath the helmet, around the torso segment where you bend it back you can see a little bit more, which we could get a better view from the backside. When it comes to decaling, the figure has it all. The overall paint job doesn't look too bad, and has a solid amount of it all over the body, but the overall details on it are pretty spot on, going as far to paint the details on the actual buckles of this armor set. The overall paint job and the sculpting, well, it's a Helldiver alright, but sweet liberty, we gotta talk about this cape. Every Helldiver loves their cape. McFarlane did not get that memo, because this cape probably takes more time to pose than the entire figure, which won't be a problem for most people, because I don't think you're gonna be looking at the ass of your figure, which it looks fine from the front. It just takes a bit to get it to look right from behind, but this figure does come with a little bit of accessories. Like, we have the standard issue Liberator, which has a little bit of that gunmetal, but it does look a little bit odd with those blacked out sights. We have this chunky black blob of plastic for the machine gun, which I gotta say looks pretty fucking bad. It's not just me, right? This thing looks like ass. It's so ugly. It looks like it's sculpted out of Play-Doh. Then we have the Torture for some reason. I don't remember this being at the start of the war bond. The funniest thing about it is that the Torture is probably the most color accurate to the in-game design. The actual grip of the gun has like a chrome part, but it's not like that in-game. That's probably like one of the mess ups. Then we got the Commissar Kai Special, the Senator, which is a little hard to tell when it's also a black piece of plastic. We have a stun baton. I don't know why we have this one here, but cool. And then we have the Saber. Of course, we do have one support weapon, and it's the railgun. However, it is a pain in my bug hole. The handle where you're supposed to put the trigger hand is just too tiny, and the gun's so wide. Look, Odo complained so much that they took away the sights from the railgun. A piece of shit in-game and a piece of shit in real life. That's a joke, you sensitive baby. Of course, some of these poses won't be possible without the hands. One of the left-hand options is this kind of open cup hand, which you probably have seen me use to make poses with the gun. Then we have the most democratic fist, democracy's hand. Then, in the right hand, we also have this trigger finger hand, which will be basically used to hold any of the weapons you have. Then we have the hand that Redditors use to shove up their ass. We all know this is the hand for inputting stratagem codes. And we have this sick-ass shaka that they should definitely add into the game. And not necessarily an accessory, but it came with it. We have the Elite Edition card that gives you 50 points for fuck all, because I don't want to buy anything from McFarlane. Once I get that Golden Eagle figure, I'm never buying anything again from you guys. Then we also have this neat little card that actually gives you a little bit of lore about the Helldiver. And it's all stuff we know. But I guess it's time to get into Poseability. The head of this figure can look left with a bit of brute force. I think I turned that too far. I gotta say, out of the box, be very careful with posing the head of this figure, because it is fucking tight. The overall head movement on this figure is pretty damn limited. Like, it can't even look up or down that high. It can just, yeah, that's as far as it can move. After brutally snapping his head around, it did get a little bit more loose, but there's not too much movement here. It has a ball joint that's popped into a socket that also is on a ball joint that lets it rotate around, giving it that shoulder rolling ability. We got that double joint at the elbow. Do keep in mind it was a little tight on my figure, letting it bend really far back. We have a Jabi Da Hong reference here, and it can bend up and down at the wrists. He has some pretty limited movement at the abdomen, only being able to bend his back that far. I was able to bend it a little bit more, but it's not that crazy. And he has a pretty limited ab crunch. This leather on the leg does restrict a bit of the movement, and if we just pull up his skirt, we can see this soft under part actually gets in the way a little bit more underneath, but you can kick this far forward when it's out of the way. We got a pretty damn tight bend at the knee, which, God, it's kind of scary. Of course, it is a double bend at the knee. And of course, the foot is on a ball joint, which allows it to swivel. You might be able to get an ankle pivot on it, but the way the foot's oriented makes it almost impossible to bend it the right way. See, like I broke his foot in the process, like he stubbed his toe on a Hulk. And of course, the cape is on a bendy wire, which means you can recreate every time your Helldiver comes up and he's just completely covered by his own cape. The overall posability of the figure isn't that bad, but it isn't anything impressive. Something that messes with the overall posability is the way the shoulders are designed. Since its swivel is very limited on how far it can bend, and having no bicep swivel means it heavily restricts how you can turn or angle your Helldiver to hold the gun. It's not impossible to get him to hold the gun, but it feels like trying to actually pose an 80-year-old person. You can't even get him to reach his own wrist pad, mainly because the arm joint's so constricted. If they could have found a way to fit a bicep swivel, this could have easily fixed that problem. Like, for example, this Gym Sniper custom does have a bicep swivel, which adds way more posability, and he can actually touch his own wrist. But it's not nearly as awkward as the fact that the Joy Toy Warhammer Terminator from the Raven Guard can actually touch his wrist too, and he's, you know, the least posable thing here. And I know it's hard to add posability without really breaking the structure and the form of the character, but if he can do it, then there's absolutely no excuse. I would also keep in mind the pegs on these arms do come off relatively easily. They won't fall off if you shake the figure or like throw it, but if he is holding something heavier like a weapon, then it could struggle. So for some size comparison, we have a Gym Sniper custom, Joy Toy Raven Guard Terminator, Godzilla -1, Can, and a Reggie Drago. My overall verdict for this is that if you're someone who's a sucker for Helldivers and you get the chance to get this, well, absolutely get it, because it's pretty neat. It does have some pretty weak posability, but I have to say it's a really good looking figure. The attachments that come with this figure is also one of the weaker points for it, as the guns look absolutely terrible, with the Torture actually looking the best out of them all. And all these poses wouldn't be possible without the base plate, but I would be very careful with it because the pin on it's so tiny it feels like it's gonna break. But it's overall a figure that I think I would just pose once and post it up somewhere. But it's definitely not worth more than what people upsell it for. But that is the end of the video. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Hype this video up, and I will see you guys later.